So this is just a really quick, well, quickish design. Again, another no floral foam creation. I made one of these this morning for a wedding locally, and just really excited because it's just a really easy way to create a hanging flower ball using no oasis at all. These delightful test tubes, moss, and that's pretty much all you need. So I was really surprised actually once I'd put this together how easy it was to insert the foliage, and it just stayed, and it was, you know, it stayed in one piece, it was alive, it was great. Again, this is from other people's experience. I had to make this, I had no idea how to make it, so I asked more experienced florists than myself. And essentially this is 2 hanging baskets. So from your local hardware shop, I bought them from B&Q, and I've cable tied them, good old cable ties. There's 2 cable ties here and here, and then rope just in the middle to kind of keep the both together. I lined this, I've done half of it already, so I lined half of it with flat moss, just because the flat moss looks slightly more attractive than sphagnum moss. I've then inserted, you can kind of see, various sort of spaced them out, but test tubes full of water. I've pushed the caps so you can see them, they're out. And then all I'll do is, I've got sphagnum moss here. It just makes a jolly old mess. And half of it is then filled with sphagnum moss. And that's one half done. So I'll show you the other half. And this is something, essentially, you could get done a good 2-3 days before the wedding. I made mine on Wednesday, the wedding was this morning, so I just made sure it didn't dry out. But you're just wanting to line it with this lovely fresh green moss. So I found a box of this, does one ball essentially, which is good to know if you're buying what you need to buy for your sundries. So it needs a decent coverage, I would say. There you go. And all you're doing is obviously test tube full of water, and you're just sort of forcing it through until you can see that all feel the cream cap. I'm just going to put, this bit's quite thin, so I'm just going to put some more moss around there. So you're just spacing them out at intervals. So this is where your flowers will go, and the rest of the foliage can just be poked in the moss, which is fantastic. And again, genuinely surprised at how easy it was, and you suddenly realise this is what they did before Oasis. Which makes me sound like a complete beginner. One thing that I did find from doing the wedding this morning was that actually this does, if it's in a warm room, so I hung it last night. I went down to the venue to sort of set up, and it does dry out. So you would need to take a spray bottle with you if you were going to put it in the night before, and just really make sure it's soaked. Well, not soaked, but it's moist enough that it's not going to completely crisp up. But it's also about the type of foliage you choose to use. You know, if you've got soft stem foliage, you need to think about, will it last, you know? And if it does need to go into water, then it goes into one of these test tubes. So you can kind of see, whoops, all the test tubes are sort of spaced in and around the ball. And then all I'm going to do, whoops, one's fallen out, is simply get a wodge of good old sphagnum moss. And fill it up. Right, it's like a lovely pie. Put it together. So cable ties. An interesting, I was at the Garden Museum in London this week. Shane Connolly was doing a talk about floral sustainability, and a couple of people raised the issue around single-use, obviously Oasis and single-use plastic, but cable ties, they're not reusable, and it is an interesting thing to think about, you know, what is an alternative to cable ties, because they are an absolute godsend in terms of putting structures up. I mean, when it comes to making archways, I'm beginning to think about using Velcro straps or, you know, things that I can reuse. So I'm simply going to go round probably 2 or 3 cable ties, just catching both sides of the hanging basket. It does look a bit like an alien when you hold it up. And these are small cable ties, they're not massive. And the nice thing about this is it doesn't actually weigh that much, because that was my other fear, it falling down. So yeah, I'd say 3 is probably suffice, and then just chop these off. And there you go. Very simple. When I put the rope on, so I did a double knot, and then I cable tied the 2 bits here. I cable tied them together, just my own OCD-ness. And that'll essentially give you the ball to work from. If you've got the space, it's worth hooking it up so you can work from it while it's hanging, and then you get an idea of what it's going to look like visually as you when you put it in place. It would be difficult to work flat on the table, I think. But that's just a really simple mechanic to create a fairly impressive design using no oasis. So I wanted to share that with you just to encourage the use of these different sorts of techniques, and a really good technique to share. So I hope you enjoy it. If you like our YouTube channel, do subscribe, and look forward to seeing you again.